All right, so picture this. You're zapped back to the early 1800s,
Oh, boy.
right in the thick of it with Napoleon's army.
Yeah.
Could you hack it? That's what we're going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Our deep dive today uses this awesome history documentary, Could You Survive in Napoleon's Army?
Okay.
And it's got a killer rating. 8 out of 10 viewers loved it.
I can see why.
So let's jump in.
Yeah, the scale of it all just hits you right away.
Yeah.
Napoleon wasn't messing around. He wanted to, redraw the whole map of Europe, and his Grande Armée,
Yeah.
massive, over 600,000 soldiers at its peak.
You're kidding me.
No joke. That's more people than lived in any European city back then.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Just the logistics of it all.
Totally. And the documentary doesn't sugarcoat anything either. It really gets into the nitty-gritty of what those soldiers went through.
Yeah, primitive weapons, barely there medical care.
Can you imagine surgery with no anesthesia?
I don't even want to think about it. It really makes you appreciate what modern soldiers have, right?
Oh, absolutely. The contrast is stark. The thing is, a lot of Napoleon's guys weren't gung-ho patriots or chasing glory, like we might imagine.
Really?
Yeah, the documentary points out many were conscripts, forced into it. Others joined just to escape poverty.
Yeah.
At least the army gave them food and a little cash.
It's kind of a downer when you put it that way, isn't it?
Kind of takes the shine off the romantic image, yeah.
But they still accomplished incredible things. It's amazing when you think about it.
Right. It's like a paradox. Today's soldiers have top-notch training, high-tech gear, tons of support.
Stuff those Napoleonic troops couldn't even dream of.
Exactly.
So is it possible that all those hardships, constantly fighting to survive, actually made them tougher in a way?
It's a good question.
Because the documentary talks about how camaraderie itself was a weapon for them.
Oh, definitely.
When you're facing that kind of brutality day in and day out alongside your buddies, it's got to create an unbreakable bond, right?
It makes sense that shared experience, depending on each other, totally could have been key to their success.
Makes you wonder, could we tap into that same resilience with our modern mindsets and all?
I mean, who knows? It's fascinating to think about, though.
Yeah, the documentary really hammers home how brutal it was back then.
It was everything, not just the fighting.
Right, yeah?
I mean, think about the marches. These guys covered crazy distances all on foot, often in, terrible weather,
Yeah.
lugging all their gear.
Oh, I bet.
And then you've got disease running rampant. It's no surprise, right?
Makes sense.
The documentary said more soldiers died from stuff like dysentery and typhus than actual battle wounds.
Wow. Really puts things in perspective.
Yeah, it's like we romanticize the past, but the reality was rough.
No kidding.
Yeah.
But even with all that, the documentary shows how resilient those soldiers were. They had to be to make it out alive.
Exactly. Adaptable, too.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, were they tougher than soldiers today in some ways?
Interesting.
I mean, we have so much tech and support now, but would we have that same grit and determination if we were suddenly in their boots, you know?
That's the question, isn't it?
What do you think? If you got zapped back to that time, would our 21st century skills and mindset actually help? Could we use our resourcefulness, problem solving, even knowing history to our advantage?
I mean, we are pretty adaptable. Got to give us that.
True.
We're used to complex systems, processing info fast, coming up with creative solutions, all that.
Plus all the historical knowledge we have. We could practically be Napoleon's strategic advisor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Imagine knowing what was coming based on history books.
Right.
But let's be real. Even with all that, it'd still be a completely different world. Communication was slow. Hygiene was non-existent. Danger everywhere.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a walk in the park.
No amount of Googling could save you from a bayonet charge, that's for sure.
Exactly. So some 21st century ingenuity might help, but it wouldn't guarantee survival.
It boils down to this, could you adapt? And I mean, really adapt, not just physically, but mentally, too.
Could you handle a world with none of the comforts and certainty we're used to?
Yeah, exactly.
And could you find that sense of purpose, that belonging, even in the middle of all the hardship?
Right.
Because the documentary really emphasized these soldiers weren't just fighting for land or glory, they were fighting for each other, for survival itself.
That shared experience, that bond they forged, that's what made Napoleon's army so powerful.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the strongest thing isn't tech or training, it's that human connection.
And maybe that's something we can learn from even today. Even with our own challenges, that sense of community and shared purpose can make us incredibly strong.
You know, doing this deep dive, it's hard not to be kind of blown away by these soldiers.
Yeah.
They were just average people facing insane challenges and they still kept going.
It's amazing, isn't it? What gets me is, even with all the brutality and hardship, there were stories of incredible courage, loyalty,
Yeah.
even humor. Like, it shows you how resilient the human spirit can be.
Right, finding hope in the darkest times.
Yeah.
It makes you think, what if we were suddenly thrown into that world? No more comfy beds or smartphones or... Oh, man.
All the things we take for granted. Could we find that same strength inside ourselves?
That's a tough one. Could we adapt, not just physically, but like mentally and emotionally too?
It's humbling, for sure.
Yeah.
We have the advantage of hindsight, right? We know how the Napoleonic Wars ended. We can analyze it all from a safe distance.
Right.
But can we ever really grasp what it was like to live through that? The fear, the uncertainty, all the upheaval they saw.
It's hard to imagine.
It's easy to get caught up in the big picture, the battles, the strategies.
Yeah,
But this deep dive really brings home the human cost of it all.
absolutely. It challenges how we see things today, reminds us to look deeper, to understand how complex the past really was.
And maybe by doing that, we learn something about ourselves,
That's a good point.
about our own potential for courage and resilience.
For connection, even when things are tough.
It's something to think about, isn't it?
It really is. Those times might be over, but they still have something to teach us about the human spirit. Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those lessons. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into history.